At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. See ebaymotors.com.
At Ashley, you'll find colorful furniture that brings your home to life. Ashley makes it easier than ever to express your personal style with an array of looks in fun trending hues to choose from earth tones to vibrant colors to calming blues and greens. Ashley has pieces for every room in the house in the season's most sought-after shades. A more colorful life starts at Ashley. Shop in-store, online today. Ashley, for the love of home.
To the house! It's time with JMU Hall of Famer and someone who knows a hell of a lot about taking it to the house.
Joyce breaks a tackle and goes in for a touchdown. Another spectacular run by Delvin Joyce.
Delvin Joyce brings his unique perspective to the podcast to break down all things he's seeing about JMU football, with a little help from EPA King Jack Fitzpatrick and Bennett Conlon.
Here he goes. He's going to try to beat the punter. He does. He's gone. And that is a touchdown.
Welcome into To the House.
Look at him turn back and forth. Oh, he broke his ankles. Now he's got an entourage. And he's got a touchdown.
Now, here's Delvin Joyce with Jack Fitzpatrick and Bennett Conlon.
What's going on? Yo, that intro gets me so fired up.
I gotta ask right at the top, that touchdown call of you, do you know what game that's from?
I have no idea. I don't think I've ever heard any of those calls, but the break the ankles call, I mean, that is phenomenal.
I got that from our friend Kevin Harlan. I think it's actually a Lamar Jackson highlight, but we'll just show in the background. Your touchdown call, though, the touchdown call from a game you played with the Giants. I think it was against the Ravens.
Yes.
Early on in your career. It was somehow it is out there. The full game is out there on YouTube.
You know, you got to love YouTube.
BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. From the preseason NFL to college kicking off, BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our winner-take-all $300,000 NFL Survivor Pool for the upcoming season. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's promo code BLEAV, to get in on the action. BetOnline, the game starts here.
So, and you got to love what's happening right now. It is football season, Jack. It is also the very first episode of To the House. And, you know, I could not be more excited for the opportunity to talk about JMU football every week. Of course, I am Delvin Joyce. I am a former James Madison University football running back, kick returner, punt returner, as well as New York football giant. Jack, I know you're a big Giants fan.
You're really putting me on the spot. I mean, yeah, for this podcast, I'm a huge Giants fan.
Let's go, Jack. And of course,
Tiki Barber.
Tiki Barber. You know, I used to get Tiki a lot. except that I think I'm better looking. And I went to the real University of Virginia.
Yeah, he went to the fake University of Virginia, didn't he?
That's right. That's
Him
right.
and Rondé.
So joined by my guy, Jack Fitzpatrick. What's going on, Jack?
It's a great night. It is a great day to have the first podcast into the house.
It is phenomenal. And so I, as you reached out to me and said, hey, we really want to have a podcast on the JMU Sports News Network where we have an alum and we have some insight and analysis from somebody who knows the game. Dude, I could not be more excited to be the person that you nominated. So first off, thank you and Bennett. You guys are one of my favorite podcasts over on JMU Sports News podcast. And so to be under the JMU Sports News Network, I'm fired up, man.
We're pumped that you decided to come on. I mean, two schlubs like Bennett and I just talking about EPA, expected points added, talking about if you extend the scoreboard to the thousandths place with the decimal points, that actually every play you can see the score changing. We'll probably get into that as the season rolls on because I love advanced stats and everything like that. But we were pumped that you decided to come on board and do this podcast because we really enjoyed that interview with you a few weeks ago where you explain things in ways that Bennett and I had never thought of before.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I hope to bring to these listeners. I'm not going to be heavy on the EPA side of things.
That's why you agreed to let me fill the other half of this screen.
100%. I hope to be more on the, hey, here's what I see on the field. Here's what I'm expecting week in and week out. And here's what I think happened in each and every game that JMU plays this year. And, I can't say that I'm going to be the Tony Romo guy, the X's and O's, read the defense and break down every single play. But what I hope to bring to the listeners as you guys tune in is just that unique perspective as somebody who not only played football at James Madison, but also played at a very high level in the NFL.
Yeah, that's something that Ben and I cannot touch.
Well, you were an athlete, right, Jack?
I did marching band all through high school, 1 year of college. I did play intramural basketball at JMU. I did get ejected from a game getting a double tech, but that's besides the point.
Hey, intramural basketball at JMU was super competitive. I also played intramural basketball. Funny story. After my rookie season with the Giants, I came back to JMU, played basketball at UREC, sprained my ankle right before training camp. And literally went into training camp and said, hey, I was helping my buddy move furniture and fell down the stairs. That was my story. So Ronnie Barnes, New York Giants trainer extraordinaire. If you are listening, I actually was going up for a layup and fell on someone's ankle. Nice. All right. So Jack, let's get into it. I mean, so this show To the House, our focus will really be about reviewing and just talking about the analysis from the games each week. Now, we don't have a game to review this week, of course, because this is game week. And dude, when I tell you I'm fired up for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's game week, but number two, the game is in my backyard. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. We're playing UNC Charlotte, and there's a lot of smack talk happening.
Really?
In the Queen City. There's a lot of smack talk because, of course, I live in Charlotte. I know a lot of people that went to UNC Charlotte. It's a huge commuter school. So a lot of these people lived here. They grew up here. They went to school there, and they stay here forever. And so, I proudly have my JMU flag hanging outside my house right now and just really looking forward to some smack talk this week. And so because we do not have that tonight, our inaugural episode, I want to go back and talk about some of my expectations for the season, right? Because, you guys have, I think, done a really good job of talking about your expectations on the JMU Sports News podcast. I want to talk about my expectations for the season from my unique perspective. I also want to do a quick preview of the Charlotte game. And then we'll get into, one of our segments that I think is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a little bit of nostalgia for me. So we'll talk about that in a minute. And then we're going to take it to the house. And of course, that is going to be my closing commentary before we let you guys get out of here and we go on to the next episode. So Jack, if you're open to it, I want to start with my first expectation for this season.
I'm so excited to hear these expectations.
Well, and again, I want you to chime in because, again, you guys have talked a lot about some of the things that I'm going to talk about. And I think we are in alignment on a lot of these things. And the very first thing that I'll bring up is I am very excited to see how this team rallies around the vision of Coach Bob Chesney. And I believe personally, and again, I'm going to talk about this a little bit as we take it to the house, but I believe personally that this team is gonna go based on how they will rally around Coach Bob Chesney and his vision. And so some of the things that you've heard come out of camp, family, close-knit team, right? What's your why? Professionalism, practicing like an NFL team. These are all things that we never really heard from the prior administration, right? The prior staff. And so now, how will these players adapt to that? So, Jack, what are your thoughts?
I like it because it is a big one. I mean, not only is it a new coaching staff, 60 some odd new players too. How do they buy in, all coming from different backgrounds, different coaching styles? Even the players that are remaining on the roster, your Taurus Joneses, your Tyshawn Wyatts, your Chauncey Logans, these kind of, like great players on this squad that are holdovers from Cignetti. How do they respond? Because Cignetti is a vastly different coach. And also, maybe I'm getting too into the weeds here. How do they respond to not being part of the group that went to Indiana? Like Chauncey Logan was the cornerback 1 a year ago. Taurus Jones was expected to be the guy next to Jalen Walker. They're still at not sliding anything, but like you see all of your teammates, all of your friends go to this Big Ten school, probably get some NIL bags in there, and you're still at JMU. Now you're getting indoctrinated with this completely new culture from Chesney. How do you respond to that? Because you're kind of the old guy in the locker room. How does that all pan out? I think how they buy in and how it all plays out under this new vision with Bob Chesney is going to be fascinating to watch.
And it's funny you say that about these guys, the let's call them the leftovers. If you listen to the interviews from all these players, they sound just like Coach Chesney.
Yeah,
and that is a rare thing. Like and I always say the speed of the leader is the speed of the team. And so the fact that the players have not only, I think, bought into his vision, they also are sort of mimicking everything that he's saying, which really tells me that there's a lot of buy-in, even down to the fact that they have the sports psychology side of it. I listen to a lot of interviews from a lot of these players, and they're mentioning the guy Dorian who does the mental performance part of it. These are all things that when I was a player at JMU in the 90s, the late 90s, I'm aging myself. We never talked about sports psychology. We never talked about nutrition. We never talked about taking care of our bodies and all these things that these players are talking about. And I think that is all a function of the vision that Coach Bob Chesney has for this team. So very curious to see how they rally around that.
Yeah, because it's vastly different. And it's different. I mean, won a lot. The Cignetti's way won a lot.
Yeah.
If you come out of the gates and it's a completely new roster, it'll take time to mesh. What if you drop 2 of your first 3? What if you somehow drop at Charlotte and at UNC and you're sitting there and you're like, well, that other guy's philosophy worked, and it'll be interesting to see how that all comes together. Not saying that I think that's going to happen. I'm in the positive camp. People sometimes think I'm a little too negative.
Oh, Jack.
I don't want to be. I'm just saying, like, what if, and these different hypotheticals that play in my mind at night as I'm trying to go to sleep. I'm like, well, what if this worst case scenario happens?
Well, I mean, all right. So to that point, I think that it's easy to be bought into the vision as long as you're winning, as long as things are going well. I think it was Mike Tyson that said everybody has a plan until you get half your ear bitten off. I think that's the quote, right?
Yeah, close enough.
And so we are all bought into this vision. We love Bob Chesney. He says all the right things, but that kind of, goes out the window to your point. If we drop this game against Charlotte, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but we dropped the game against Charlotte, a program that does not have the winning culture that JMU has. Now, it's not saying that they're not a good team. It's just that our team, our fans, and everyone has an expectation that we're going to roll into Charlotte and win that game, right? So again, now here's the advantage of a coaching change. And by the way, I went through 2 coaching changes during my football career. At JMU, we started with Alex Wood and transitioned to Mickey Matthews, I think my junior year. In the NFL, I had Coach Jim Fossil for my first 2 seasons, and then in comes Tom Coughlin. And by the way, these are vastly different coaches on both levels. And one of the things that's interesting about when there's a coaching change, the players play harder. And here's why. Even the stars on the team play harder. You know why, Jack? Because they have no equity with the new coaching staff. They have no goodwill. And so they understand that, although I may have proven it and proven myself with the prior staff, I've got to prove it all over again with this new staff. So the guys on the team that you just mentioned, the Chauncey Logans, the Taurus Joneses, the Cole Pottses, those guys are going to practice and play harder than they would have for a Cignetti because they had equity with Cignetti. Cignetti knew what they were. Bob Chesney and his staff had no idea. So those guys play harder. The other side of that coaching change that I think is going to help us is that there are also players on this team that feel like they're going to get a fresh start, and they're going to play harder. The Wayne Knights of the world. And I don't know
he has exited the portal.
He's exited the portal. I heard that. That news was broken on your podcast. but Wayne Knight has exited the portal. And a guy like Wayne Knight says, you know what? I was one thing under the Cignetti brand, and now I have this whole new staff that comes in. They have no idea who I am, and I get an opportunity to prove myself. And I'm going to bust my tail to prove myself. And so the level of performance goes up in spring ball. The level of performance goes up in fall camp, and a rising tide lifts all boats. So I am excited to see how that intensity sort of changes the trajectory of this team this year.
I love that. That's a very different perspective than here I am waving that's a scared flag. And that's a great point. What are some other expectations you have?
Yeah. So, all right. So if we think about offense for this season, I really would love to see us use our tight ends. I mean, I feel like last year we saw flashes with Horton. He'd come in, he'd catch 3 passes, all 3 would be touchdowns. And then the very next week, he doesn't get his hands on the ball at all. And I would love for us to have an offense that consistently uses the tight end. And we've got some talented tight ends on this roster that can actually run, like really athletic receiver-like tight ends who can run block, but also run and use their speed. Guys like Kai Wright. What's the kid that transferred from Charlotte, actually?
Taylor Thompson. My guy. Love Taylor Thompson.
The guy can run. And if you have a tight end who can run at this level of football, it's kind of like having a 7-footer in a G5 basketball. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
If you got a 7-footer, that's a huge advantage. When you get to the NBA, everybody's 7 feet. Doesn't really matter. But at the G5 level, you got a couple of 7-footers on your roster. Shout out to our Preston Spradlin, right? I mean, he's pulling in the 7-footers. And so that's going to be a huge advantage for the basketball team, and tight ends that can run are going to be a huge advantage for us. So I'd like to see us really get them involved. The other thing offensively, though, is I would love for us to be much more imaginative on the offensive side of the ball. Far too often last season, and by the way, I love everything that we accomplished last season. This is not a knock on that team, that coaching staff, but far too often it was 2 clouds, 2 yards and a cloud of smoke. It was, Elijah Surratt bails us out, makes some phenomenal play. And I would love to see us really mix it up and use some of those traditional things that will help to keep a defense off balance, rather than just relying on our playmakers to make these phenomenal plays in the clutch. And so let's run some traditional draw plays. Let's run some screens. And I don't mean the quick receiver screen where we just call receiver. If I see that play one more time in college football, I'm going to pull my hair out, and I'm already bald. But I want to see, the running back catch a screen pass and take it to the house, right? Shout out to this podcast.
Wow. Already the plug of the name. That's professional right there.
Listen, I'm not new to this. I'm true to this. And I would also really, really love to see option routes in the passing game. I mean, option routes at this level of football, and again, to just break it down for you, an option route is where either the slot receiver, the tight end, or the running backs coming out of the backfield, they've got a linebacker on them or they've got a nickel, and they get to read the defense and say, all right, we're in zone. The defense is in a zone. Well, I'm going to find the soft spot in the zone and sit down and catch a 5-yard pass. Or they're in man, and I can either go left or go right, and the quarterback and I are going to sync up, and they're going to hit me with a pass, and I'm going to pick up 5 yards for a first down. I don't feel like we use that enough. And knowing what I know about Coach Kennedy, the offensive coordinator, I do believe that he is one of these OCs that does not live in theory. I think he lives in practicality and reality. Jack, there's an old saying that if an offensive coordinator dies and goes to heaven and they've got a choice, they can either meet God or go to the lecture on God. Most offensive coordinators would go to the lecture, right? I believe that Coach Kennedy would meet God and not live in that theory. And so I'm just excited to see what this offense can do. What are your perspectives, though? You've been at camp. What are your thoughts?
Well, the point on Dean Kennedy at Media Day, I asked him about kind of what it was like learning under Dan Mullen, because he was a grad assistant offensive analyst under Dan Mullen for, I believe, 6 seasons across 2 different stops. I believe it was Mississippi State and Florida. And one of the big takeaways he had from during his time with Dan Mullen was, we just get the ball. We're going to get the ball to our playmakers. We're going to get plays, and we're going to get the ball to the playmaker. He's just like, we had Kyle Pitts, who hasn't necessarily panned out in Atlanta with the Falcons, but if you remember his time with the Gators, that was right during the Dean Kennedy time with the Florida Gators. Kyle Pitts was the best tight end, best receiving option in the entire nation with Kyle Trask. And for Pitts, it was lining up as a traditional tight end. It was lining up in the backfield. It was lining up off the line of scrimmage. It was lining up in the slot. And it was all these different things to make sure that they got the matchups they wanted with their best players. So it's in practice. It's not just the theory thing that you were saying. He's going to execute the way he wants his offense to go, and he's going to make sure that his quarterbacks, all of his skill position players, are in on it. If they're not all in on it, he's got a big playbook. I mean, this is a young offensive coordinator. If my research is right, he's one of the youngest offensive coordinators at the FBS level. That typically tells you that the dude's probably imaginative enough to get a job like this.
Absolutely. And to your earlier point, they've got a lot of weapons on offense. And I think it all starts in the backfield, man. You got Ayo there. You've got Petaway. I even think Wayne Knight's going to make contributions. I think the receiving core is a lot more solid. And this kind of brings me to what I think is, sort of my next expectation for this 2024 edition of the Dukes. I believe that there will be some unexpected heroes on this roster. And you know what? Every single year this happens. That if there's anybody listening to this podcast right now that tells me that they knew that Elijah Surratt coming from FCS, where did he come from?
St. Francis.
St. Francis. When he came to this roster, we didn't think he was All-American wide receiver. We just thought he was Cheese's brother.
Kurt Cignetti didn't even think he was an All-American wide receiver. He wasn't on the 2 deep against Bucknell.
Against Bucknell. And I don't even think he played against even UVA. He
didn't play a lot of snaps, no.
Yeah, and the guy turns out to be a freaking all-world receiver, right? Aiden Fisher. I mean, if there's anybody that's listening to this pod that tells me that you knew that Aiden Fisher was going to be a baller, then you know what? I got some land to sell you in Florida. I do not believe that anybody knew that kid was going to be a beast. And even our guy, Jalen Green, which were all very, very high on the career that he had before his injury. The guy was an absolute monster for us on the defensive line. But you know what? The prior season, what did he play? 5? I mean, he had 5 starts, maybe.
If you had told me that he was going to be on pace to break 20 sacks in a single season, I would have looked you dead in the face and been like, bull, insert whatever next words you want to insert, because that's not happening. But he's fantastic. And now cleared for full contact. He's going to start working out for NFL teams. Will likely find his way onto a roster at some point this season.
Exactly. And so here's the point, Jack Fitzpatrick, EPA King. There is going to be a player that emerges. And I think there will be 2 or 3 guys that emerge on this roster that we have never heard of. We have zero expectations for them, and they are going to play a huge role for JMU this upcoming season. And so that's what I'm very, very excited for. But that is a very significant expectation that I have. And by the way, it may or may not be a portal guy that we got. It may be someone who's been on this roster for a couple of years, who got that fresh start, busted their butt in practice with Coach Bob Chesney, and now gets an opportunity to prove it.
I'm going to throw some names out that could potentially, just so I have this on record so that I can go back and figure this out.
I love it.
I'm going Joby Mallory, running back from Portland State. Love the dude. He's 6'2", 240, something like that. Massive human.
By the way, watching him run the ball, I feel like he is what we thought Latrell Palmer was going to evolve to, right?
Yes.
And he gets north and south, and he uses his size. I mean, I love the guy too.
Wide receiver, I have no earthly clue, because every day it sounds like we're talking about it. Just so everyone is aware, wide receivers, you got Tajee Hudson, Cam Ross, Breon Penny, Dylan Williams, Maxwell Moss,
Yamir
Knight. That's 6 guys right there. And then along with that, at tight end, you got Taylor Thompson, Kai Wright, Logan Kyle, and Josh Pfeiffer. That's 10 guys who have gotten a lot of talk during the offseason so I have no earthly clue. Defensively, Jordan Taylor, the Division II transfer, I've been really high on. I've been talking up a lot. He might be a baller. Or Evan Spivey might be a name, not on the 2 deep, that will be making big contributions at year's end.
Evan Spivey. Look at you, Jack, coming out the woodwork. I haven't even heard that name. So
he was a baller during spring practice, and then I think kind of got buried with all of the transfers they brought in. He was a young dude who I guess wasn't necessarily fully ready for, a full season workload. Not necessarily short, but they went out, they added 15 new guys in the spring portal. He kind of hasn't, I haven't heard a ton of his name during this fall camp, but that's a guy that he was getting a lot of hype around spring ball that could potentially just burst onto the scene out of nowhere.
Wow. So, all right. So you did bring up a name that I am very high on, and I can't wait to see what this guy actually does on the field. Jordan Taylor. Dude is an absolute monster. And by the way, he's named after the GOAT.
Is he named after Michael Jordan?
I mean, his name is Jordan.
Oh, you just assumed. You're an MJ guy. You're an MJ guy.
I'm an MJ guy. And by the way, his parents didn't name him LeBron Taylor. So,
all right.
So that's all you need to know, right? So Jordan Taylor, though, what I love about this guy is number one, he's got a chip on his shoulder. I mean, he played 4 seasons at a D2 school. Probably felt like he was overlooked by some FCS programs. Now he gets an opportunity to come to the FBS. Granted at a G5, but it's a G5 powerhouse. I think that guy's got a huge chip on his shoulder. He's a 10-3 100-meter guy.
He's fast.
So he's fast as heck. And the thing that you can't, I guess, discount is that he's from Miami, bro. Like, he's got that Florida swag. He's got that just cockiness that comes with knowing you came from the state that produces the best football players in the nation. And I lived in Florida for 6 years. I can confidently tell you that the best football players do not come from Texas. They do not come from California. Don't at me. They come from Florida. And so to have this kid on our roster, I think it's a huge advantage for us in the secondary. He's going to ball.
He's a dog.
He's a dog. And by the way, the only consistent holdover from the Signetti staff is his coach. And I just think that DB room is going to be a lot better than they were last year. Hopefully we put these kids in a better situation. And that's going to bring me to my next expectation for this upcoming season. which is I would love to see a more balanced defense. And I know Cignetti, his whole thing was he committed to stopping the run. And I get the philosophy, and I don't know that this was his philosophy necessarily, but Jack, if you think about execution, if you think about a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds going out to execute a play, it's probably much easier for them to hand the ball off and get 5 yards versus dropping back and throwing a pass for 5 yards. A lot more bad things can happen in the passing scenario. And for Cignetti, I think he made the calculation that if we can commit to stopping the run, no team can run on us. Now they got to pass the ball, and there's so many more variables in the passing game. I do think that was part of the calculus.
That makes sense.
So coming into this season, I'd love to see us a little more balanced. I love the fact that we stopped the run, but we gave up a tremendous amount of yardage on the pass. And so we're going from, the SIG to hemp, right? And some people, I guess, would say that's an upgrade. I have no idea, but I'm looking forward to seeing a more balanced defense. So
Yeah.
what did you hear coming out of camp about the Hemphill defense?
Hemphill loves to force turnovers. Lyle Hemphill, that has been wherever he goes, he wants a defense that forces turnovers. And I talked with him about that, kind of where turnovers aren't a sticky stat from year to year. That's typically, if you're trying to find a defense that is primed for regression, you look at one that may have outperformed expectation when it comes to turnovers. And he was like, yeah, we understand that. We try to create turnover worthy plays X amount of time. So every time you're tackling, punch the ball. You're not going to get a fumble every time you punch the ball, but every 65th time you're going to get a fumble. So punch it every time so you can increase the odds of you're doing it. And then they just work on, having better ball skills, because defensive backs are notorious failed wide receivers turn defensive backs, right. and things of that sort. How to scoop up a ball and run it the other way, how to block once you get the ball, even for defenders, how to hold on to the ball once you have it, because, Manuel Bush probably isn't the most familiar on how to run with a ball going the other way full speed and gets chased down from behind. So he's doing a lot of these little things that will try to create turnovers, but also just make it where the odds are essentially in their favor.
Yeah, I mean, creating turnovers is a part of your makeup, right? I mean, if you look at the teams that are really good at creating turnovers, they practice it, just like you said. And so looking forward to seeing that team just fly around and make some plays. The last thing I would say is that we have to get more production out of our return game. And this one is near and dear to my heart.
I bet it is.
As a return guy, I mean, I scream at the TV every single Saturday. I am a rabid, crazy, lunatic JMU football fan. And, to see the constant capitulation in the punt return game. Let's just go out and fair catch the ball. I don't want to see that anymore. I want to see D'Angelo Amos style, Scotty McGee style punt return. I need it to be an advantage for us. The question is, who is the guy that's going to do that? I have my thoughts on who it could be, but you were at camp, and again, I'm not sure what you're allowed to talk about, but who do you see sort of filling that role as the return guy?
I have no clue. I'm so intrigued. As long as it's someone who's not Jack Faircatch Swarba, who it was for like 4 years, Cheese Faircatch Surratt. Those, as long as it's someone other than that. Pettaway did it a lot at UNC, or not a lot, but Pettaway had limited action and was successful in it at UNC. So maybe Pettaway. Dollison has been reported to get up to 22 miles an hour. Love to see his speed in the open field. Who are you thinking of? Who would you like to see back there?
Well, I mean, I think a guy like Wayne Knight probably has really good ball skills, and I think that's a place where he could contribute. Not just on third down in the offensive scheme, but let's get that guy in space. He's shifty. He's fast enough. I also think that I like your call on Dollison. I think he is, a receiver that may not necessarily get the amount of touches that he wants in the offensive game plan. But if we could get the ball to him in space on punt return, I think that would be phenomenal. Same with Petaway. You probably don't want to put Petaway back there to catch kickoffs. I think that's, typically going to be reserved for a guy who, I hate to use this word, but would be expendable, if you will. But it really needs to be somebody that can actually go out, catch the ball, and make a play. We need to turn special teams on that side of the ball in the return game. We need to turn that into an advantage. So our kicking game has been phenomenal the last several years. We've been adequate, I think. In the field goals and PAT, we have no concerns there. It's just this one little thing on the return game that we just haven't gotten any production out of. And if we can do that, in addition to getting some offensive and defensive production, I know it goes without saying, but I think we're going to be phenomenal this year as a team.
It'll be insane to actually see a special teams unit in terms of the returning portion of it contribute to the winning of a football game. Because you saw it. There was a Georgia State game in 2022 where their return game helped give them a 3-possession lead at one point. And you're just like, oh, this is what it's capable of doing.
Right.
Oh, I forgot that you're allowed to advance a football.
Yeah, no kidding. So as we think about some of those were my expectations. I mean, I got like a laundry list of things that I like to see, but for the sake of time, I want to segue now to the Charlotte game, because a lot of my other expectations will sort of dovetail into this first game. And I think the first thing that I think, if we think about what's going to make us successful this weekend, first off, I'd feel a whole lot better if this game was at the Mullet. And for our listeners, the Mullet for me is Bridgeforth Stadium, because it's business on one side, party on the other. Right. and if this game were at the Mullet, I'd feel so much better, because in so many ways, this feels a lot like the Middle Tennessee State game. Our first game, we had no you remember that? Like, we had no idea what was going to happen.
No, there was
no clue.
There was no way to gauge either.
There was no way to gauge. And pessimistically, I think a lot of us went into that game saying, well, I mean, it is our first FBS game. This team actually went to a bowl and won that bowl game last year. I think if we can keep it close, it'd be fantastic. And we went out and blew them out. And in a lot of ways, I feel like, this first game for both teams is kind of like that vibrating football game back in the day. I don't know, you're not old enough, but when I was a kid, Jack, everybody my age wanted this vibrating football field where you get these players and you put them on the field and you set up a play. You have to set up where you want the players to go, each individual play, and then you turn the vibration on, and then you just let whatever happens happen. And for me, I kind of feel like both teams are, both coaches are going to put their players on the field. They've designed these wonderful plays, but I don't think they even know what's going to happen. And so I'm a little worried about this first game, and I don't know what to do about my.
eBay Motors is here for the ride. Remember when you first saw the potential? And then through some elbow grease, fresh installs, and a whole lot of love, you transformed 100,000 miles and a body full of rust into a drive that's all your own? With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, exhaust kits, turbochargers, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. See ebaymotors.com.
Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. Shopify is there to help you grow. Shopify helps you sell everywhere, from their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person POS system. Shopify's got you covered. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout, 36% better on average compared to other leading commerce platforms, and sell more with less effort thanks to Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star. What I love about Shopify is how no matter how big you want to grow, Shopify gives you everything you need to take control and take your business to the next level. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S., and Shopify is the global force behind Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. Because businesses that grow with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Westwood1, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Westwood1 now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/Westwood1.
At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Well, I got to ask you a question that might not help the nerves either. As a former player with road games, one, how different are road games from a player's perspective? And two, opening the season on the road. I feel like that just is, it almost is it is exponentially harder, but that's coming from a fan's perspective.
Well, I think for the road game, the first thing you have to remember is that we're talking about 19, 20, 21-year-olds who the more routine you can create for them, the more successful they are likely to be. And when you go on the road, you break all the routines. And so the concentration is different. The focus is different. And what from all accounts, what I've heard from Coach Bob Chesney is that he's done a phenomenal job of creating these uncomfortable situations for the players so that hopefully the fact that they're in enemy territory on Saturday is a non-issue. I guess the other part about being on the road is that it's harder to play on the road when you have amazing atmosphere at your stadium and then you go to another place and there's nobody there. Like during my time in the Atlantic 10, when I was at JMU, we'd go to Rhode Island and there'd be 2,000 people there, if that. And then we'd go to Maine and there's 300 people in the stands. Those were the hard games. When you go to what I think the atmosphere is going to be like in Charlotte this weekend, I think it's going to be electric. I agree with you. I heard you say that on the Sports News podcast. I think it's going to be electric for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's the first game of the season. And Charlotte 49ers fans are kind of like Carolina Panthers fans. Everybody in the stadium is probably a fan of someone else, but as long as they are winning, they'll show up. And both teams are 0-0 on Saturday. The fans will show up. I believe it will be a sellout. And so the second thing is that everybody's fired up around here about Max Brown. I think they're all coming out to see this Florida transfer quarterback who a lot of people have compared to Pat Mahomes. And if he plays like Pat Mahomes, I'm probably not going to sleep very well this week. So, I mean, you spent some time in Charlotte working with the 49ers. I mean, what are your thoughts about what you think the atmosphere will be like in that stadium on Saturday?
You hit the nail on the head, and I've never been able to vocalize what it is about Charlotte 49ers fans and Charlotte in general fans. Yeah, they're a fan of everyone else. I mean, people, they may have wanted to go to Chapel Hill. They may have wanted to go to Duke, but they ended up at Charlotte. I love Charlotte. I want to get that out there in case there's a Charlotte fan listening to this, and I know they've been out there listening to some stuff. I love Charlotte. I'm not trying to disparage them. I'm just calling it how I see it. But for their baseball games, they have a great student section. At their soccer games, they get great student sections. And the bigger the game, the more rowdy. And they have a rowdy student section. I have seen them get into fights, verbal altercations with opposing fans who maybe take the opposing fans in these situations take it a step too far. And the Charlotte student section isn't afraid to go toe to toe with them.
Wow.
They're a fun student section. The gold mine. I can't wait to see what they have in store for this game. So overall, Charlotte, they come out. There's high expectations. Like you said, Max Brown's supposed to be the truth. I think there's still hope that Biff Poggi is the answer. And I think because it's the first game of the season, they still think they can win the AAC. So they're going to come out like Duke in 2021. They sold out Jerry Richardson Stadium for Duke. They won the game because of a rowdy atmosphere. And that was another night game, CBS Sports Network. This one's on ESPNU. I'm seeing the Charlotte fans too on Twitter saying this is maybe the biggest game in program history. This is one of the biggest games in recent Charlotte football history. Whoo, they're going to be up.
Well, they're going to be up. And the fact that they are so fired up about this game, I think tells you a lot about the trajectory of these two programs. And I do think that one of the keys to victory for JMU is the fact that we are coming in with that winning culture. And Charlotte, they are still building a culture. Listen, my kids are older than this recent iteration of the team. Okay.
Isn't this recent iteration only 10 years old, 11 years old?
10 years old. I mean, my son, who's my youngest, is 14. So, and we lived in Charlotte when they started the program. So my son's like, oh, Charlotte's starting a team, right? And so I think that when you have two programs, one with a winning culture, one who is building a culture, these teams know exactly who they are. I'm not saying that Charlotte is going to be intimidated by JMU whatsoever, but I do know that culture kind of seeps into the bones of an organization. It seeps into the building. It seeps into the stadium. It seeps into the expectations that fans have. And so if I had to look at JMU versus Charlotte and culture, JMU wins. And the fact that they've played, twice already, and JMU is 2-0, and that sort of plays into the psyche of the players, none of whom were on the roster or maybe even born the first time that, the first two times that they played. But when you have a program, and I heard this stat, I can't remember, maybe it was some other 49er podcast, their longest punt return in team history is 46 yards.
Oh,
their record book is littered with stats like that. And when you compare that culture versus the culture that JMU has built, I got to give us the advantage. I think that's going to play into, our opportunity to win this game. Now, I will also say that, when we think about these two programs, Max Brown, by all intents and purposes, is a legitimate star. I got a chance to watch some film on him. I mean, he's got incredible arm strength. He can also run the ball, and he seems to be a smart guy who makes good decisions, who played SEC football at Florida.
started
2 games and will not be intimidated by anything, JMU related. And so I do think that that's gonna play for him. I think the big difference, though, is he's not playing with SEC talent around him. And so when, some of the film that I was watching and some of the throws that he was able to make, there were some guys on that side of Florida with him that made some big time catches as well. And this, again, is not a disparagement to anybody on UNC Charlotte's team, but I do not know that they have the same level of talent, the same SEC talent that Max Brown played with at Florida. Now, if we were to look at where I guess our team is, we've got our own, power 4.2 transfer in Dylan Moore's Demo. And we haven't named a starter. As of today, we have not named him as the starter.
I don't know if he's going to be named the starter.
I don't know either. And it's very interesting because, listen, AB3, Alonzo Barnett III, who I call AB3, the kid is immensely talented. I mean, I want you to think about how talented this guy had to be if the coaches on Cignetti's staff saw enough in him to put him ahead of the Sun Belt Conference Player of the Year. Immense talent. Now, the unfortunate thing I think for AB3 is that he had a short leash. And when you
one of the shortest leashes I've ever seen.
And when you are a player, and by the way, if he knew he had that short of a leash going into that game, that might have actually played into why he played so poorly in the first half of that game. I remember when I was with the Giants, I'm an undrafted free agent. Tiki Barber could fumble the ball 16 times a game. But for me as an undrafted free agent, I fumble the ball once or I miss a blocking assignment once, and I'm on the first thing smoking. Tiki Barber gets grace. And so the amount of pressure that I had as an undrafted free agent, knowing that I had a very short leash if I got in the backfield, was totally different. And so I think for AB3, whatever he has showed the coaching staff last year, I think he's flashing the same sort of thing this year, which, again, I hope we don't have a quarterback controversy. I don't care who it is. I just want the best person. But I don't want two quarterbacks.
Yeah. I mean, my whole point with McLeod and even Morris, it was always like, these are older guys. This was before the Supreme Court ruling that made college football even wackier than it has been. So in theory, McLeod was coming for his last stop. Dylan Morris is coming for his last stop because he does not have a year of eligibility after this, where it almost feels like the coaching staff would tell them, like, hey, you're coming to use this last year of eligibility. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It's a competition, but like, come on, we know it. And then for Barnett to kind of course, I don't know for a fact that there's a wink, wink, nudge, nudge happening. And maybe these quarterbacks just really want to test themselves. But even so, like, Barnett's then coming in and beating out or battling with Morris and McLeod. That shows a lot about his ability and what he is. And if you just watch him in warmups at any game, if he's in his warm-up lines, the ball comes out of his hand and you go, wow. Like he in a warm-up line, he's one of the greatest quarterbacks I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Hopefully that can now translate to on the field. I think it was just a mix of poor play calling, tough positions he was put in, playing under tremendous pressure. It was kind of where the wheels fell off. And then when your coach at halftime and in post game says he has the yips, have you ever seen a golfer not be able to swing a club? That's what happened to him. Then there goes all of your confidence.
Well, I mean, the guy is an immense talent. He's got amazing zip on the ball and he can use his legs, and he is a very smart kid. Like, I mean, extremely smart. And by the way, his mom is from my hometown, Martinsville, Virginia. So shout out Martinsville. Now I think, as we think about AB3 though, and this quarterback situation, we just need somebody that can go in and consistently make plays. As great a player as Jordan McLeod was, I think we talked about this. I don't know that we ever actually trusted him. And the fact that he is at Texas State right now, I hope I'm not giving him any bulletin board material. I think he's a phenomenal player. I think he's going to be fantastic for Texas State. This is not an indictment on him. I think it's more the perception that Coach Cignetti created for him based on some of the interviews and the things that he said during the game and or after games. And so I've never, ever seen a school lose a conference player of the year and the fan base kind of just go, oh, well, right? I mean, I don't know anyone who was like, I can't believe we lost Jordan McLeod. What are we going to do now? And so, again, I think that we feel like whether it's AB3 or it's Demo, we feel like collectively as a fan base that, we've probably upgraded the quarterback position, even though we lost the Sun Belt Conference Player of the Year. And I think the Charlotte game is an opportunity. Whoever gets the start is an opportunity to prove that, we've actually upgraded that position.
Man, I just think, and this is no slight to the quarterback room, what if JMU got Max Brown in the transfer portal? That kid, he's a baller. And that's the scariest thing about this Charlotte game. Max Brown's a baller. Will be really fun to see how that plays out, because whoever JMU trots out should be able to go toe-to-toe with him.
Yeah, what's interesting about I think Max Brown too, though, is that I don't know how he ended up at Charlotte. I mean, was there an NIL bag for him there? You think?
Yeah.
And what do you think that number is for a Max Brown to leave a SEC Florida? I mean, do you think he had an opportunity to compete for the job there?
Maybe, but probably not. I think there was probably a good amount of money used in Charlotte's NIL budget to bring in Max Brown, to bring in a lot of these P5 castaways they have on their roster.
Yeah.
They probably they got some money.
Well, Jack, I do have to tell you that you are out of your mind if you believe that there is ever a wink wink and a promise to a player, especially at the quarterback position, that you're going to come in and be the starter. There is 0% chance that Bob Chesney sat down with Dylan Morris and said, wink, wink, you're the starter. No chance.
Okay.
Now, what I think that conversation is that, hey, Jordan McLeod was the player of the year. He's gone. Here's who we have on the roster, and you will have a very good opportunity to come win the job on a very high level football team. And Demo, I think, in my opinion, has to sort of make that decision. Do I take a chance going to a JMU where I got to compete against, Billy Atkins the fourth and AB3? Do I take that chance or do I go somewhere else? But there is never a wink, wink, and a promise. Not when someone's livelihood is riding on it.
That's a very fair point. That is a very fair point. I guess I would, maybe this is just not the athlete in me, so I don't have the competitor mindset to the same level. But like, if I'm Dylan Morris, I'd want to go to a place where it's all but guaranteed for my final year of eligibility to wrap it up. Because at this point, Morris, I don't know if he's still trying to go to the NFL route, like what that is, but like, this might be your last year of college eligibility, but then you could also be them trying to position yourself for life after football, and JMU may give you the best opportunity to compete there. I know there's a lot of layers to it, but that's good. Okay.
There's never a wink, wink, and a promise. Never, ever.
But what about a wink, wink, nudge, wink?
Hey, it is. We are going to give you every opportunity to win this job. And so, I do think that as we look at this quarterback competition, Coach Bob Chesney and the staff, as they evaluate the quarterbacks, they probably do like some of the things they see from AB3 a lot more because he can use his legs. And coming from Holy Cross, they had a quarterback who basically used his legs every single play. So AB3 probably fits what they're comfortable with more so than Demo. Now, I think the other key, and then we're gonna switch over to talk about some of the stuff happening in college football as a whole. But I think the last thing that I want to say from a sort of scouting report standpoint, as it relates to this Charlotte game, one of the things that I see is that Charlotte probably believes that they can look at some of this Holy Cross film. And that's going to give them an indication of what JMU is going to do. Because if you look at the scouting report, we've got the advantage. We sort of know what Biff Poggi is going to do. Of course, there are going to be some wrinkles in this offense because of, the addition of Max Brown. The defense, which, by the way, Charlotte's defense was really good last year. The defense is going to largely be the exact same scheme. We've got the advantage. Biff Poggi and staff are probably looking at the Holy Cross film right now, and they're trying to evaluate and make an inference for what JMU is actually going to do on Saturday. Here's the problem. The talent level that Coach Bob Chesney has at JMU right now far exceeds the talent level that he had at Holy Cross. And so there are some things that they're going to be able to do schematically, both on offense and defense, that they could have never dreamed of doing with the talent that they had at Holy Cross. And again, not a disparagement of Holy Cross, but the reality is there is a huge upgrade in talent on this JMU roster for the coaching staff.
Yeah. And last year it was a little scratching your head. Why don't they just announce QB1? Alonzo and Jordan McLeod have very similar skill sets. This I can understand. Like you said, like there is a little bit of gamesmanship. You do get a competitive advantage, albeit a small one. But Dylan Morris and Alonzo Barnett have different skill sets. If Dylan Morris is your starter, it's probably more traditional passing game. If Alonzo Barnett's your starter, you might be utilizing some Sluka plays from Holy Cross. And right now, that's the only film Biff Poggi has to work off of. So I would not be shocked if that first 2 deep comes out and it's an or next to the name of the quarterback, and we don't officially know until the day of the game.
Wow. Hot take from Jack Bennett, the EPA king. I love it. All right. So again, I think it's going to be a barn burner of a game. I'm going to be there. I got a bunch of JMU football alums who are going to be there with us. And so we're going to be crazy screaming. You're going to be there, right, Jack? So it's going to be a great time.
It's going to be a party.
It's going to be a party. All right. So let's transition now to a segment that is near and dear to my heart. For you guys, our To The House listeners, you have to know something about me. I grew up as a huge fan of Different Strokes. That's right, the sitcom with my guy Arnold and Mr. Drummond and his big brother Willis. And so one of my favorite sayings, Jack, do you even know that show?
I know of the show. I have yet to watch an episode, but like I said yesterday, it's on my homework list. I'm going to get around to watching a show.
Come on, man. You got TV land, right? All right. I need you to watch I need you to watch Different Strokes. All right. So the great thing about Different Strokes is that, Arnold, who is the main character, and I used to identify Arnold because, Gary Coleman, the character, the actor that played Arnold, was a short guy. And of course, I grew up as a short guy. My dad was a short guy. So we love all short people on TV. Arnold, Webster, George Jefferson, Fred Sanford, anybody under 5'6" on TV, they were our people. And Arnold used to have a saying when his brother Willis said something dumb, he would say, "What you talking about, Willis?" So I used to go around my house every time somebody said something stupid. I'd say, "What you talking about, Willis?" And so this is our segment, What You Talking About, Willis? It's my opportunity to go around the world of college football and find something that I think is maybe a bad take and ask, "What you talking about, Willis?"
What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about? What you talking about, Willis?
Oh, that is fantastic. All right. So the first one is, radio communication, Jack. I know you know this, but radio communication is now being allowed in college football for the first time ever. And so each team now can designate one player on offense, one player on defense, and the coach can actually talk to them through a radio system in their helmets. I happen to believe that is going to be a huge advantage and a game changer in the college football landscape. But Texas Tech coach Joey McGuire doesn't think so. And here's what Joey McGuire said. He said, "It's an absolutely horrible rule. It's really, really comical. You're still going to see teams signal." He says you're still going to see people with the signs on the sideline and signaling in and, the red cap, green cap, blue cap on the sideline. And he said they actually experimented with it in practice, and it was a fiasco. I got to ask Texas Tech coach Joey McGuire, what you talking about, Willis? What is your thought on that, Jack?
About him thinking people are still going to steal signs and everything? What? I don't know. Some coaches, you know this, coaches hate change.
They hate change. And of course, to me, it was going to be a fiasco. Signaling the plays through the radio and then having your linebacker give a call to the defense or having your quarterback, your quarterback's kind of used to that. But having these players do that, I think is a different it's a different sort of thought process for them pre-snap. So if you try it once or twice in practice, it's probably going to be a fiasco.
Yeah.
But the more you work on it, the better it will be. And I got a chance to hear the Dylan Morris interview. I think it was with Dave Rigger, a fantastic interview with Dylan. But Dylan talked about the advantage of having the coach in his ear, giving him the play rather than having to look at the sideline and get the play while the defense is setting up. And so what he said is that I can watch the defense sort of get into their formation while I'm listening to the play. And furthermore, I can actually have Coach Kenny actually, remind me of the situation and the down and distance and what to look for in college football, if you've got a 20-year-old guy who's got a lot of things on his mind when he gets in that huddle, that is a phenomenal opportunity for you to sort of get one last little coaching tip in there to help your offense be successful.
I'm excited to see how it is done. And I think it cuts off 15 seconds left on the play clock around that time, something like that.
15 seconds.
So then he has some time with his own thoughts as it clicks down, but plenty of time in there to get your coaching tips in, to get the play in. The defensive side of it's going to be really interesting. I think JMU has all linebackers who are practicing with it in. So all linebackers are getting used to having it in their ears, just the play calls and everything, so that when they go to just one player, they're all capable of doing it. Say Jacob Dobbs is the guy with the green dot. He gets knocked out. Trent Hendrick will step in. Torres Jones will step in, and they're all ready for it.
Yeah, I think it's going to put a lot of onus on the defenses to really move around and change up their formations pre-snap, because the quarterbacks are going to be keying on what they're doing pre-snap. But once that 15-second mark hits, that's when you're going to start to see these defenses shift. And I think Hemphill is a defensive coordinator who likes a lot of movement out of his defense. And so hopefully Charlotte is not ready for that this upcoming week. The other one that I saw this week, was from Tone Diggs from Pat McAfee's show. And I'm just going to go through this really quick, but he said that Ohio State might not give up a touchdown the first 5 weeks of their season. May not give up a touchdown the first 5 weeks of the season. Now let me tell you who they have in the first 5 weeks. First game, they have Akron. Second game, Western Michigan. Third game, Sun Belt Conference, Marshall. Fourth game, Michigan State, who's, I think, ranked or on the cusp of being ranked. And then fifth game is Iowa. May not give up a touchdown. Tone Diggs, what you talking about, Willis? There is zero chance that Ohio State goes through that gauntlet, which is not necessarily a gauntlet, but goes through those first 5 games without giving up a touchdown. I do not see that happening. All right, Jack, any final thoughts on what you're talking about, Willis?
Iowa will not score a touchdown against them. I will say that. Iowa's offense is a bit.
Iowa will not score a touchdown. What is Iowa ranked?
I don't care. Their offense was the worst in the nation last year. Their so bad.
Offense was the worst in the nation last year. But Jack, we have this wonderful thing now called the transfer portal.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. I'll give respect to the Hawkeyes.
We have no idea what any of these teams are going to do. You can throw the preseason rankings out of the window. We have no earthly idea.
Fair.
Which brings me to my closing commentary. Jack, are you ready for me to take it to the house?
Let's take it to the house.
Let's take it to the house. All right. So, Jack, as we enter the 2024 college football season, I think we're all starting to hear a very familiar refrain. Now, you know the refrain I'm talking about, the one that goes something like this. We're entering a new era of college football, blah, blah, blah. And while I think we've all seen the combination of the transfer portal and NIL and how that has totally changed the landscape of college sports, I think this new era sentiment may be more true this year than at any point in the previous 5 years. Because in addition to the increased football scholarships allowed by the NCAA, now goes to 105, right? There was a landmark decision by the NCAA that will now allow power conference schools to pay players directly. That's right. Not the collective, not some wealthy, enthusiastic, overzealous alum who owns a Kia dealership down the street. The school itself can now pay the players. Now, one of the things you may have heard me say just now is that this will only impact the power conferences, which might have many of you wondering, what does this mean for the G5? What does it mean for the Sun Belt Conference? And more importantly, what does it mean for JMU? Now, Jack, in my day job as a financial planner, I often tell my clients that if you have enough money to solve a problem, then you don't have a problem. But this new era of college football is creating a problem for many universities that I'm afraid most of them will not have enough money to solve. So what's the answer? I personally believe that a program's ability to attract and retain a talented coach will be the key to success for every G5 or mid-major program. Now, you might say, and I know what you're thinking, well, what about the players? Well, the reality is that players now in this era are going to come and go. But if you can retain your head coach and keep the staff mostly intact, also, you're going to retain a majority of your players and create a consistent culture from year to year, irrespective of the players on the roster. Look at App State this year. The reason they're favored to win the Sun Belt Conference is because the best two teams in the Sun Belt last year both lost their coaches, JMU and Troy. So where does that leave us with Coach Bob Chesney? Obviously, he's a super talented guy who is well-liked, and he's had success everywhere he's been. I think you can Google that. I have no delusions that he will be a JMU lifer, nor do I think that it would be fair to him to have to be a JMU lifer. But certainly the program will be in an amazing place in this new era if we can squeeze 4 years out of him. So to the JMU admin, to all the alums, let's pour our resources into keeping this guy at the top of the ticket, to steal some phraseology from this political season, for as long as we can. That is, of course, if he's winning. All right. So that is this first episode of To the House. Jack, I am so excited about what's to come. We have taken it to the house. We're going to play Charlotte this weekend. It's going to be a barn burner, a party, and I can't wait to share this journey with you guys this upcoming season.
If you went on a road trip and you didn't stop for a Big Mac or drop a crispy fry between the car seats or use your McDonald's bag as a placemat, then that wasn't a road trip. It was just a really long drive. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating McDonald's.
If you're a facilities manager at a warehouse and your HVAC system goes down, it can turn up the heat, literally. But don't sweat it. Grainger has you covered. Grainger offers over 1 million industrial-grade products for all your operations, including warehouse HVAC maintenance. And even better, they offer access to experts and fast delivery, so you and your warehouse can both keep your cool. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
At Ashley, you'll find colorful furniture that brings your home to life. Ashley makes it easier than ever to express your personal style with an array of looks in fun trending hues to choose from earth tones to vibrant colors to calming blues and greens. Ashley has pieces for every room in the house in the season's most sought-after shades. A more colorful life starts at Ashley. Shop in-store or online today. Ashley, for the love of home.